The last thing Chica remembered was the metallic taste of fear. Now, silk sheets whispered against her skin, and somewhere nearby, a stranger was breathing. Her eyes snapped open to an unfamiliar ceiling, wooden beams carved with intricate patterns, traditional Korean craftsmanship she'd only seen in magazines. Panic seized her chest. This wasn't her apartment in Lagos. This wasn't anywhere she recognized. "You're awake." The voice came from her left, deep and measured, speaking English with a subtle Korean accent. Chica's head whipped toward the sound, and her body protested with a wave of nausea. A man sat in a chair beside the bed, watching her with dark, unreadable eyes. He was striking, sharp jawline, perfectly styled black hair, wearing an expensive black suit despite the early morning light filtering through paper screens. Everything about him radiated controlled danger, like a blade sheathed in silk. "Who are you?" Chica's voice came out hoarse. Her hand instinctively reached for her throat, and that's when she felt it, a bracelet on her wrist. Medical alert. Shellfish allergy. She'd never been allergic to shellfish in her life. "I'm your husband," the man said, his expression unchanging. "Lee Taeyong. You've been my wife for 3 years. The words didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense. Chica tried to sit up, but her limbs felt heavy, disconnected. "That's impossible. I'm not married. I don't even know you." Something flickered across Taeyang's face. Was it concern? Relief? She couldn't tell. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, studying her like she was a puzzle he needed to solve. "The doctor said you might experience confusion. You hit your head last night. Do you remember anything?" Chica pressed her palms against her temples, trying to squeeze out memories that wouldn't come. There was nothing. No wedding, no life in Korea, no memory of this beautiful, terrifying stranger claiming to own her heart. The last clear thing she remembered was locking her apartment door in Lagos, heading out for a morning run 3 months ago. Everything after that was a black void. "I need to leave." She threw back the silk covers, discovering she wore an elegant nightgown she'd never seen before. Her legs trembled as her feet touched the cool wooden floor. "This is a mistake. I need to go home." Taeyong stood smoothly, blocking her path to the door. He didn't touch her, but his presence was a wall. "You're home, Chica. This is our home. The hammock we bought together in Buckshin." The way he said her name, familiar yet distant, sent chills down her spine. "How do you know my name?" His eyebrow raised slightly. "Because it's your name. Chica Nwosu. You're from Lagos originally, though you told me you'd lived in several countries. We met at an art gallery opening in Gangnam 3 years ago. You were admiring a piece by Lee Bull, and I bought it for you." The details were too specific to be fabricated on the spot, yet they felt like someone else's life. Chica's training kicked in, the instincts honed during her years with the CIA, even though that life was supposed to be behind her. She needed information. She needed to stay calm and observe. "I want to see a doctor," she said carefully. "A real doctor. Not whoever told you I'd be confused." "Of course." Taeyong pulled out his phone, and she noticed his knuckles, scarred, healed over many times. These weren't the hands of a businessman. "Dr. Kim will come this afternoon. In the meantime, rest. Mrs. Beck will bring you breakfast." He moved toward the door with the grace of a predator, and Chica noticed something else. The way he walked, always aware of his surroundings, always positioned to react. She knew that walk. She'd been trained in it herself. Taeyong. The name felt strange on her tongue. He paused, hand on the doorframe, not turning back. "What do you do?" "For work." "Import and export," he said after a long pause. "Family business." It was the kind of answer that meant everything and nothing. He left without another word, and Chica heard a soft click, the door locking from the outside. She was a prisoner in a gilded cage. Moving quickly despite her shakiness, Chica explored the room. It was spacious and beautiful, mixing traditional Korean elements with modern luxury. But something was off. The clothes in the closet were expensive, all in her size but not her style, too conservative, too demure. The books on the shelf were in Korean, a language she didn't speak. And the photos on the dresser made her blood run cold. There she was, smiling beside Taeyong at various locations around Seoul, wearing a wedding hanbok. cutting a cake. But something about the woman in those photos felt wrong. The smile didn't reach her eyes. The posture was different, more submissive, less confident than Chica had ever stood. A soft knock interrupted her investigation. An older Korean woman entered, carrying a breakfast tray. Her eyes widened when she saw Chica standing, and something like fear crossed her face before she schooled it into neutrality. "Good morning, Mrs. Lee," the woman said in careful English, setting the tray on a low table. "I am Mrs. Beck. I've prepared your favorite, Pajeon and rice." "Mrs. Beck," Chica said gently, watching the woman's reaction carefully. "How long have you worked here?" "5 years, ma'am. Since before you came." "And I've been here 3 years?" "Yes, ma'am." Chica pointed to the breakfast. "Is there seafood in any of this?" Mrs. Beck's face went pale.
"No, ma'am."
"You know I would never. You're allergic." She stopped abruptly, and Chica saw it clearly. Confusion, then fear, then a desperate attempt to hide both. "What's wrong?" Chica pressed. "Nothing, ma'am. Forgive me. I should go." "Wait." Chica grabbed the woman's arm gently.
"Please."
"Something's wrong, and I think you know it. I'm not who he thinks I am. I'm not his wife." Mrs. Beck's eyes filled with tears. She glanced at the door, then leaned in close, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't know who you are, but you look exactly like her."
"Exactly."
"But you're different." She was afraid. "You're not." She pulled away, her voice returning to normal volume. "Enjoy your breakfast, Mrs. Lee." She practically ran from the room. Chica's hands were shaking as she sat down, but not from fear, from adrenaline. Mrs. Beck had confirmed it. Whoever Taeyong thought she wasn't that person. And somewhere out there was a woman who looked exactly like her. A twin. She had a twin sister she'd never known existed. And someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to put Chica in her place. Chica spent the next 2 days becoming someone else. She studied every photograph in the house, memorizing the way her twin sister, Ada, she'd learned from a monogrammed handkerchief, held herself. Ada's shoulders curved inward, defensive. Her smiles were small, contained. She touched Taeyong rarely in photos, and when she did, her fingers barely grazed his arm, as if contact burned. Chica could play afraid. She'd done it before in operations across 3 continents. But this was different. This wasn't a mission with an extraction plan. This was survival. Taeyong watched her constantly with those calculating eyes, and she watched him right back. On the 3rd morning, she found him in his study, a room she'd been explicitly told was off-limits. The door had been left cracked open, an obvious test. Chica pushed it wider, her heart hammering as she stepped inside. The room was all dark wood and leather, walls lined with books in Korean, English, and Japanese. But what caught her attention was the wall of monitors showing security feeds from around the compound. Taeyong sat at his desk, speaking rapid Korean into his phone. When he saw her, he didn't startle. He simply ended the call and gestured to the chair across from him. "You're feeling better," he said. It wasn't a question. "The headaches are gone." Chica sat, forcing herself to perch nervously on the edge of the seat the way Ada did in photos. "I wanted to thank you for being patient with me. You're my wife." His tone was neutral, giving nothing away. Where else would you be? She needed to push, to see how he'd react. "Mrs. Beck mentioned I used to play piano before my accident, but I don't remember how." Taeyong's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "You told me you'd never learned, that your father forbade it." "My father." Chica let the words hang in the air. "Tell me about him." "You don't remember your own father?" "I remember a man who died when I was young, but sometimes I dream of someone else. Someone dangerous." Taeyong stood abruptly, moving to the window overlooking the traditional garden below. His reflection in the glass was hard, unreadable. "Your father is alive. Emmanuel Nwosu. He's a businessman in Lagos. Our families have an arrangement." The way he said arrangement made Chica's skin crawl. What kind of arrangement? He turned to face her fully, and for the first time, she saw something raw in his expression. Anger, yes, but also a deep, complicated pain. "You were collateral, Chica. Your father owed my organization a substantial debt. You were payment." The words hit like a physical blow. Chica had suspected something dark, but hearing it spoken so plainly made bile rise in her throat. You bought me? I accepted you as settlement. His voice was cold again. The momentary vulnerability shuddered away. That's how this world works. And I just agreed to marry you? You didn't have a choice. Chica stood, letting real anger show because Ada would be angry too. So, I'm a slave? Property. You're my wife. Taeyong repeated, but something flickered in his eyes. And under my protection. No one can touch you. Not even your father. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his entire demeanor shifted, tension coiling through his body like a snake preparing to strike. I need to handle something.
Stay in the house today.
Don't go outside.
Why?
What's wrong? Business. He was already moving toward the door. Mrs. Beck will stay with you. He left, and Chica heard multiple car engines starting outside, voices shouting in Korean, the compound suddenly alive with urgent activity. This was her chance. She waited 10 minutes, then slipped out of the study and down a hallway she'd been mapping in her mind. The house was massive, a traditional hanok expanded with modern additions that created a labyrinth of rooms. She found what she was looking for in the west wing, a bedroom that had been locked until today. The door stood ajar. Inside, Chica found Ada's real room. Not the sanitized version she'd been sleeping in, but the private space of a woman living in captivity. The walls were covered with maps of Seoul, escape routes marked in red. A hidden compartment in the floor contained passports, 3 of them, all with Ada's face but different names. Cash in multiple currencies. And a burner phone. Chica's hands trembled as she powered it on. One contact. Sister. She pressed call before she could overthink it. The line rang once.
Twice.
On the 3rd ring, her own voice answered. Who is this? Ada's voice was harsher than Chica's, roughened by cigarettes or stress or both. It's Chica, your twin sister. The one you kidnapped and drugged and left to take your place. Silence stretched so long Chica thought the call had dropped. Then Ada laughed, a bitter, broken sound. So you figured it out. Took you longer than I expected. The CIA must be slipping. Chica's blood ran cold. How do you know about that? Because dear old dad told me everything about you when he was setting up this brilliant plan. You were always his favorite, you know. The one he actually trained properly. I was just the disposable one he could sell off. Where are you? Somewhere safe. Somewhere Taeyong and his dogs can't find me. Ada's voice turned sharp. Listen carefully, little sister. You need to stay exactly where you are. Play the perfect wife. Don't try to run because you won't make it out alive. Why? Chica demanded. Why did you do this to me? Because I needed someone who could survive in that house. Someone who wouldn't crumble under Taeyang's cold stares and colder world. Ada's voice cracked slightly. And because I knew if anyone could protect him from what's coming, it would be you. Protect him? He's a criminal. He bought you like property. He's also the only thing standing between Seoul and a war that will kill thousands. Ada was speaking faster now, urgently. Park Dong-min is moving against him. Taeyong doesn't know it yet, but Dong-min has someone inside the organization. Someone close. When Dong-min strikes, everyone in that house will die unless. The line went dead. Chica tried to redial, but the phone was locked out, the number erased. A sophisticated security measure. Ada had been prepared for this call. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Chica shoved the phone back into the floor compartment and closed it just as Mrs. Beck appeared in the doorway, her face pale with fear. You shouldn't be in here, the older woman whispered. If he finds out, who's Park Dong-min? Chica cut her off. Mrs. Beck's eyes widened. Where did you hear that name? Tell me. The housekeeper glanced over her shoulder, then stepped fully into the room, closing the door behind her. He's a monster. Worse than Mr. Lee ever was. He wants control of Seoul's underworld, and he'll burn everything to get it. She grabbed Chica's hands, her grip surprisingly strong. 3 weeks ago, Mrs. Ada tried to meet with him. She thought she could negotiate her freedom. She came back bloodied and terrified, and 2 days later, she was gone. We thought Mr. Lee had finally. She couldn't finish the sentence. You thought he killed her. Who else? Mrs. Beck's voice broke. But then you appeared, and you looked just like her, and we didn't know what to think. The pieces were clicking into place, forming a picture more complex than Chica had imagined. Ada hadn't just run away. She'd orchestrated something bigger, something that involved Dongmin and a betrayal inside Taeyang's organization. Car engines roared back into the compound. Through the window, Chica saw Taeyang emerge from a black SUV, his suit jacket torn, blood on his collar. Not his blood. He moved without injury. But his face was a mask of barely contained rage. Their eyes met across the garden, and even from this distance, Chica felt the intensity of his stare. He knew she'd been snooping, and he was done playing games. Mrs. Beck grabbed her arm. Whatever you're planning, do it carefully. Mr. Lee is dangerous when he's cornered. And right now, someone just backed him into a very small corner. Taeyang disappeared into the house, his footsteps thundering toward them. Chica straightened her spine, shedding Ada's defensive posture. If he wanted the truth, she'd give it to him, but on her terms. Taeyang kicked the door open so hard it slammed against the wall. His eyes locked onto Chica with predatory focus, and Mrs. Beck fled the room without a word, leaving them alone. Blood spattered his white shirt, drops and smears that told a story of violence Chica knew too well. His knuckles were split, fresh wounds that hadn't been there an hour ago. Who did you call? His voice was deceptively quiet, the kind of calm that preceded storms. Chica held her ground, though every instinct screamed at her to move, to fight, to run. I don't know what you're talking about. He crossed the room in 3 strides, pulling the burner phone from the floor compartment with practiced ease. Don't lie to me. I have surveillance on every device that powers on in this house. You called someone 14 minutes ago. The number traced to a disposable phone in Singapore. He held the phone up between them. So I'll ask again. Who did you call?
Ada.
The truth came out sharp and clear. My twin sister. The woman whose life you forced me into. Something shifted in Taeyang's expression. Not surprise, but a grim confirmation of something he'd already suspected. He pocketed the phone and stepped back, running a hand through his hair. Blood smeared his forehead, and he looked suddenly exhausted beneath the rage. How long have you known?
Chica pressed.
That I'm not her? Since the first morning. He laughed bitterly. You stood differently. Looked me in the eye instead of at the floor. Ada was terrified of me from the day she arrived. You're not afraid of anything. Then why keep pretending? Because someone delivered you to my door, drugged and unconscious, with false identification claiming you were my wife returning from a medical trip abroad. Taeyang moved to the window, his silhouette rigid against the afternoon light. Someone wanted me to believe Ada had come back, which meant someone wanted me distracted while they made their real move. Park Dongmin. Taeyang spun around, and this time his surprise was genuine. How do you know that name? Ada told me he's planning something. An attack. She said someone inside your organization is working with him. She told you this in a 14-minute phone call? His eyes narrowed. What else did she say? Chica weighed her options. Trust was a currency in this world, and she'd just spent some of it. But if Ada was right about the threat, holding back information could get them both killed. She said you're the only thing preventing a war. That when Dongmin moves, everyone in this house will die. And she said I'm supposed to protect you. The silence stretched between them, thick with implications neither wanted to voice. Finally, Taeyang spoke, his voice rough. 3 hours ago, someone tried to kill my sister. She's 16 years old, still in school. They shot at her car in broad daylight in Gangnam. His hands clenched into fists. My men killed the shooters before they could finish the job, but the message was clear. Dongmin wants me to know he can reach anyone I care about. Chica's chest tightened. Is she safe?
For now.
I have her in a secure location with my best guards. He turned back to face her fully. But this is just the beginning. Dongmin won't stop until I'm dead, or he controls everything I've built. And if Ada is involved. She's not working with him, Chica interrupted, surprising herself with her certainty. She's terrified of him. Whatever happened 3 weeks ago, it wasn't an alliance. Then where is she? Why did she run? Why send you? Because she's your wife, and that makes her a target. And because. Chica hesitated, pieces clicking into place even as she spoke them. Because she knew something. Something worth running from both you and Dongmin. Taeyong was quiet for a long moment, studying her with an intensity that felt like being dissected. You said you were CIA. Former, I assume? How did you? The way you moved through this house.
The questions you asked.
How quickly you adapted. He tilted his head. You're not a civilian playing spy. You're a trained operative pretending to be a scared housewife. There was no point denying it. 5 years with the agency. Operations across West Africa and Southeast Asia. I resigned 8 months ago. Why? Because I was tired of the lies. The truth surprised her. Tired of being someone else. And yet here you are again, wearing someone else's face, living someone else's life. He moved closer, and Chica caught the scent of his cologne mixed with gunpowder and copper. The difference is, this time you didn't choose it.
No.
She met his eyes. But I'm choosing what happens next. Which is, we find Ada. We find out who's betraying you. And we stop Dongmin before he starts a war. Chica stepped forward, closing the distance between them. But I need to know something first. Did you love her, Ada? The question seemed to catch him off guard. His jaw worked, emotions warring across his face before he locked them down.
No.
Our marriage was a business transaction. She hated me for it, and I. He trailed off. I never pretended otherwise. Then why search for her? Why not just let her go? Because she's still my responsibility. And because whoever took her from me was making a statement. His voice hardened. No one takes what's mine and Lev's. It was the answer of a crime lord, not a husband. Chica should have been repulsed. Instead, she understood it. The pride, the territorial need to protect what belonged to his sphere of influence. She'd seen it in warlords and generals, in everyone who built empires on violence and will. I found something else, she said, moving to the closet. Behind Ada's clothes, she'd noticed earlier that the wall sounded hollow. Now she pressed until a panel clicked open, revealing a hidden safe. Can you open this? Taeyong pulled out his phone, accessing something that made the safe beep and swing open. Inside were files, photographs, documents, USB drives. Chica pulled out the first folder and froze. The photos showed Taeyang's head of security, Mr. Cho, meeting with Park Dongmin at various locations around Seoul. Handshakes, money exchanges, and in one damning image, Mr. Cho handing over what looked like building schematics. Your compound, Chica whispered, recognizing the layout. He gave Dongmin the blueprints to this house. Taeyang's face had gone completely blank, the kind of emptiness that preceded extreme violence. Mr. Cho has been with me for 8 years. He's saved my life twice. And now he's selling you to your enemy. Chica pulled out more photos, these showing Mr. Cho following Ada, watching her, documenting her movements. The timestamps were from 4 weeks ago, right before she disappeared. Ada was investigating him. She figured out the betrayal. And he found out she knew. Taeyang's voice was ice. So he arranged her disappearance and brought you here as a replacement, buying himself time to complete whatever he and Dongmin are planning. A phone buzzed, Taeyang's. He answered it with a curt yes, then listened, his expression growing darker. He hung up without saying goodbye. That was my second in command. Mr. Cho just requested emergency leave, family emergency in Busan. He's running. Or he's getting into position for the attack. Chica's mind raced through tactical scenarios. If he has the compound blueprints, he knows every entrance, every blind spot, every security protocol. When is Dongmin most likely to move? Tonight. My sister's location was moved an hour ago. Only 3 people knew where, me, my second, and Mr. Cho. Taeyong was already moving, pulling a gun from a hidden panel and checking the magazine. He'll tell Dongmin, and they'll hit both locations simultaneously. Divide my forces. So we don't divide them. Chica grabbed his arm. We bring your sister here, into the one place they think they can breach. And we turn their trap into ours. Taeyong stared at her, and something shifted in his gaze, calculation mixing with something warmer, something like respect. You'd risk your life for my sister? For me? You don't owe us anything. No, Chica agreed. But Ada sent me here for a reason. Maybe she knew this moment was coming. Maybe she knew I was the only one who could. The lights went out. Emergency generators kicked in immediately, bathing everything in red emergency lighting. And somewhere in the compound, glass shattered. "They're early," Taeyong growled, chambering around. "Stay behind me." But Chica was already moving toward the sound, her body remembering training that had kept her alive through a dozen firefights. "I don't hide. I fight." Gunfire erupted from the floor below, followed by screaming. The attack had begun. Chica hit the floor as bullets tore through the wall above her head, splinters of ancient wood raining down like deadly confetti. Taeyong returned fire through the doorway, his shots precise and controlled. 3 seconds. 3 shots. 2 bodies dropped in the hallway outside, but more footsteps thundered up the stairs. At least a dozen men, maybe more. "The panic room," Taeyong barked, grabbing her arm.
Now.
"Where's Mrs. Beck?" Chica twisted from his grip, remembering the older woman who'd shown her kindness. If she's smart, already there. He pulled her down a side corridor, away from the main assault. Behind them, the house erupted into chaos. More gunfire, shouting in Korean, the crash of furniture being overturned. They reached a traditional sliding door that looked like all the others, but when Taeyong pressed his palm against a hidden scanner, it opened onto a reinforced steel door. Beyond was a room filled with monitors, weapons, and enough supplies for a siege. Mrs. Beck was already inside, along with 3 of Taeyong's guards. But what made Chica's breath catch was the woman sitting calmly in the corner, scrolling through her phone like she was waiting for a bus. Ada looked up and smiled. "Hello, sister." The resemblance was uncanny. Same face, same build, same dark skin and natural curls. But Ada's eyes were harder, lined with exhaustion and something bitter that came from surviving too long in darkness. She wore tactical gear, all black, with a gun holstered at her hip. "You." Taeyong's weapon came up, aimed at Ada's head. "You set this up. You brought Dongmin here." "Actually," Ada said, standing slowly with her hands visible, "I'm the one who's going to save your life. Again." She nodded to the monitors, showing multiple camera feeds. "Count the attackers." "Go ahead." Chica moved to the screens, her tactical mind automatically cataloging threats. 15 men visible. Professional gear. Moving in coordinated teams. She froze on one camera showing the compound's front gate. "That's not Dongmin's crew. Those uniforms, that's private military." "Exec Protect Seoul," Ada confirmed. "One of the most elite security firms in Asia. It costs about $50,000 an hour to rent a team this size." She looked at Taeyong. "Your enemy isn't just Dongmin anymore. Someone with serious money wants you dead." "Who?" Taeyong's gun hadn't lowered. "Emmanuel Nwosu. Our father." Ada's voice dripped venom. Turns out selling one daughter wasn't enough. He wanted to liquidate his entire debt to your organization, so he made a new deal with Dongmin. Your head in exchange for complete freedom and a cut of your territories. Chica felt like she'd been punched. "Our father is trying to kill you?" "Not just him. He's been planning this for months." Ada pulled out a tablet, swiping through documents. "Mr. Cho was his inside man from the beginning. When I figured it out 3 weeks ago, Cho tried to kill me. I barely escaped." She met Taeyong's eyes. "I knew I couldn't warn you. You'd never believe me over your loyal soldier. So I did the only thing I could think of. I brought in my sister, the one person I knew could protect you and survive what was coming. By drugging me and kidnapping me?" Chica's anger flared hot. "You had no right." "I had every right." Ada's composure cracked. "You got the good life, Chica. Dad kept you safe, trained you, gave you opportunities. I was the one he sold. The disposable one. The collateral." Tears streaked down her face. "So yes, I used you. But I also saved you from what Dad had planned. He was going to use you next, another daughter to trade away when it suited him." The room fell silent except for the distant gunfire. On the monitors, the attackers were methodically clearing the house, moving toward the panic room's location. "They'll find us in 8 minutes, one of Taeyong's guards reported. Maybe less if they have the full schematics." "They do," Ada confirmed, "which is why we're not staying here." She pressed a button on the wall, and a section of floor slid away, revealing a ladder descending into darkness. "Escape tunnel. Leads to a garage 3 blocks away." I had it built 6 months ago without telling anyone. Taeyong stared at her. You've been planning this for 6 months? I've been planning to survive for 3 years. Ada's voice was steel. Every day in this house was a war. You just never noticed because I was good at playing weak. She gestured to the tunnel. Now we can stand here and debate my methods, or we can get your sister to safety. Your choice. My sister. Taeyong's face went white. The safe house. Compromised 10 minutes ago. I already sent my team to extract her. She's meeting us at the garage. Ada's expression softened slightly. I'm not a monster, Taeyong. I know what it's like to be used as leverage. An explosion rocked the house above them. Dust rained from the ceiling as the monitors went dark one by one. The attackers were systematically destroying the security system. Move! Taeyong ordered his men. Mrs. Beck went down first, then the guards. Taeyong turned to Chica. You go. I'll cover the rear. Like hell. Chica grabbed a rifle from the weapons rack, checking the magazine with practiced efficiency. I don't abandon people. Even crime lords with martyr complexes. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, respect, and something deeper that made her chest tight. You're either very brave or very stupid. Both, apparently. She moved to the tunnel entrance beside Ada, who was watching them with an unreadable expression. You actually care about him, Ada said quietly. That was fast. I care about not dying tonight. Chica shot back, but they both knew it was a lie. The panic room door groaned under assault. They were cutting through with torches. Taeyong went down the ladder, and Chica followed, with Ada last. As soon as Ada's feet cleared the opening, she triggered a switch that sealed the floor and started a timer. 3 minutes until this tunnel fills with concrete, she explained, already running. We need to move. They sprinted through the darkness, emergency lights flickering every 10 feet. Behind them, muffled explosions suggested the attackers had breached the panic room. Ahead, Chica could see the ladder leading up to the garage. They climbed fast. Taeyong emerged first, weapon raised, then relaxed.
Clear.
Chica pulled herself up into a nondescript garage containing 3 black SUVs and one very frightened teenage girl with Taeyong's eyes. She ran to her brother, who caught her in a fierce hug. Appa, she sobbed against his chest. They shot Mr. Cho. He was trying to hurt me, and these people came and...
Shuh.
You're safe now. Taeyong looked at Ada over his sister's head. Your team? Good people. Former Korean Special Forces. They know how to handle traitors. Ada tossed him car keys. The middle SUV is armored and fueled. Head to the port. I have a boat waiting. Singapore is 12 hours by sea. You're not coming? Chica asked. Someone needs to stay and clean up this mess. Our father, Dongmin, the corrupt officials who looked the other way, they all need to pay. Ada smiled grimly. Besides, I'm legally still Taeyong's wife, which means I can access his accounts, his properties, his organization. Someone needs to hold down the fort while you two figure out what happens next. Taeyong stepped toward her, his expression complex. Ada's eyes glistened, but she blinked the tears away.
Go.
Before Exec Protect tracks you here. They loaded into the SUV, Taeyong driving, his sister in back with one of Ada's guards, and Chica in the passenger seat. As they pulled out of the garage into Seoul's neon-lit streets, Chica watched Ada in the side mirror, standing alone in the garage entrance, silhouetted against the fire consuming the Hanok mansion in the distance. Will we see her again? Taeyong's sister asked quietly. Yes, Taeyong said with certainty. Ada always survives. The city blurred past as they headed toward the port. Chica felt Taeyong's hand find hers between the seats, his grip warm and solid. When we get to Singapore, he said quietly, you can leave, disappear, go back to Lagos or anywhere else. I'll make sure you have everything you need. Chica looked at him, really looked at the man who'd become real to her over days that felt like years. And if I don't want to leave... His eyes met hers briefly before returning to the road, and she saw everything in that glance. Hope, fear, possibility. Then stay, he said simply. Not as Ada's replacement, as yourself. Behind them, sirens wailed as emergency services converged on Buckshin. Ahead, the ocean waited with all its uncertain promises. Chica squeezed his hand. I'll stay.